You can now get a 30-day trial to experience The Athletic for free. Visit the link in the description below to try it now. In August 2004, Hamburg travelled to Paderborn in the first round of the German Cup. After 30 minutes, as expected, the Bundesliga side were 2 goals up against their regional Liga opponents and heading for the next round. But they wouldn't get there. Paderborn scored 4 goals without reply and won a game that would remain notorious, while also forming the basis for one of the biggest scandals German football has ever known. With 35 minutes gone, Paderborn were thrown a lifeline. An attacking free kick was played into the box and, under no real challenge, a Paderborn player collapsed to the floor. There were no appeals for a penalty, but referee Robert Heuser immediately pointed to the spot. It was converted, and on the walk back to the halfway line, baffled Hamburg players could be seen protesting with Heuser. Then, before the game could restart, he flashed a red card at Belgian forward Emil Mpenza. So far so strange. Paderborn immediately capitalised on their one-man advantage, equalising with a fine header before half-time, before then taking the lead after a catastrophe in the visiting defence following the break. With 8 minutes remaining, the game was settled. Alexander Lobe fell after a 50-50 with Bastian Reinhardt, and again, Heuser didn't hesitate in giving a penalty. If anything, the second decision was softer than the first. The result was the same though. Guido Spork scored to seal a 4-2 win. So who was this referee? Who was Robert Heuser? Well, at the time that he refereed the Paderborn HSV game, he was just 24 and an up-and-coming official who'd risen to take charge of Bundesliga 2 and Pokal games. He was from Berlin and, unbeknownst to those within the game, in his free time had been drawn to the bright lights of a local sports bar, the Café King. Heuser would later reflect on what it was about the bar and its patrons that seduced him. There were always very expensive cars parked outside the cafe, he said. I must admit that really impressed me. This way of life became something I really wanted, having a lot by doing very little. You see, back in 2004, referees at Heuser's level of the game were earning roughly €3,000 per match. And the more time he spent at the cafe, the closer he became to its owners, a trio of Croatian brothers who were part of a sports betting syndicate. And the extent of Heuser's involvement would become clear in the months following the Paderborn HSV game. While the outside world assumed it to be just another case of bad refereeing, Heuser's decisions that day had 2 unseen consequences. The first was that several referees who had seen his performance voiced their concerns to the German Football Association. The second was that after an online betting company reported irregular betting patterns in the game, a criminal investigation began. Heuser would be arrested in February of 2005 and would immediately cooperate with both prosecutors and the DFB. And that's when the extent of the scandal quickly began to reveal itself. His evidence would lead to the questioning of more than 20 other people, 14 players, and cover a range of 13 different games in 2004 alone, 11 of which were refereed by Heuser himself. In 2 other games, he implicated another referee, Dominic Marx, testifying that he received money to affect their outcome. Marx pled not guilty to the charges, but would eventually be handed a suspended prison sentence. Heuser would also reveal that he attempted to recruit 2 more referees. One would be banned for failing to report the approach, another for accepting a €300 bribe. But his revelations would focus on his own descent into match fixing and how at the Café King in Berlin he had fallen in with the gambling syndicate, led by Croatian Ante Sapina, and his 2 brothers, Milan and Filip. At trial, the prosecution presented Ante Sapina as a compulsive gambler who bet heavily on football and who, according to his indictment, had won over €500,000 as a result of Paderborn's victory over HSV alone. Heuser admitted to receiving €20,000 for fixing that game, and in total, across 8 months of games in 2004, received in the region of €67,000, in addition to a new flat-screen TV. But there was a further complication. At the time the scandal was unravelling, Germany was preparing to host the 2006 World Cup. There had long been the naive, even pious assumption that the country's officials were above the kind of offences that Heuser was now admitting to. Fans and sections of the media were aghast. The World Cup, according to an editorial published by Berliner Zeitung, should act as a friendly host to the world and put across the message to the entire globe that the Football Republic of Germany is courageous and good. It demanded a swift response. Now, fortunately, Heuser's willingness to talk expedited the process. The DFB ordered the replaying of a match between Aalen and Wacker Burghausen, in which he admitted giving a penalty after being paid to influence the result. And while the Paderborn-Hamburg game wasn't replayed, HSV were awarded significant compensation by the DFB and granted a Germany international at their Volksparkstadion. The legal reaction was more decisive. Prosecutors announced in February 2005 that nearly €2.5 million had been seized from the Subpoena brothers' bank account, plus property, and that all three brothers would be charged, facing trial at the end of the year, coincidentally just before the group stage draw for the World Cup was about to take place. Anti-Subpoena was sentenced to 35 months in prison, his brother Milan was given a 16-month suspended sentence, and Philippe, the older brother, 12 months suspended. And Robert Heuser, who admitted to fixing 4 games and was charged with 11 separate offences, was found guilty on 6 counts of being an accessory to fraud and sentenced to 2 years and 5 months in prison, while also receiving a lifetime ban from football. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic brings you the best sports journalism in the world in a personalised experience, connecting you with the stories and teams that you care about the most. There's coverage of 13 sports, plus direct access to world-class journalists through live Q&As, discussions and podcasts. Not to mention, it's all ad-free. And you can try it now for free for 30 days by clicking the link in the description.